Hello and welcome everybody to Week 6, Day 2 of the LCS Challengers broadcast. Surprise, surprise, the internet outages are hitting everybody in Los Angeles, so I have live at the Castro Cabana Joshi.
It's
How's
good to,
it
it's
going?
good to be
I can
here
touch
for
you.
the first time you can. This has never
I
happened
was reaching
before.
somewhere else and I caught myself before I committed
This
to
is
it.
a PG stream, Steve. We do have to be very careful about that. But
Unfortunately, Deserex is also out due to internet issues. They're all over LA. La Tigers, we're not going to lose you, right?
I don't know what it is. For some reason, the little spot I'm at never loses power or internet. It's always everyone else. So I'm here to be the rock.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but I am.
I mean, you were the very supportive caster yesterday. We'll see if you can keep that up today.
Absolutely.
And I still have some of my pump going on. I'm feeling
Yeah. And y'all are stuck with me again 2 days in a row now. I'm filling in here. Full disclosure, we're going to have some fun with it today because obviously we were ready about, I think, 15 minutes before we went live was probably when we finally settled in. And we're like, yeah, I think we're good to go. We're going to have a show today. So let's have a show today.
You said before we actually started there was a bit that we did for Proving Grounds last year.
Yes.
we showed up.
We don't talk
if
about
anybody
that
remembers
bit.
Academy Theater, it was,
Oh,
it
gosh.
was one of the most exciting bits I think we have ever done.
La Tigers, did you ever see that one?
Yeah, you're talking about it. I'm like, I don't know if I have. I might
Oh
have
my
to go
God.
back and check this out.
I will say the first 2 minutes are great, and then it goes on for another 6.
And then the other 6 minutes are like, it should have been a 2-minute bit. They didn't really plan for the next 6 minutes, did they? And they were right.
They were very right.
Yeah.
They were very right. I don't think I did a very good job of sticking to my lines, but you know, we had a good time.
I just kept hearing Kelsey Moser, our producer at the time, her voice in my head saying, commit to the bit, like, from the season. And then I would actually hear in my ear, like,
5 more
should we
minutes.
send them to break?
No.
They're struggling.
No, the stage is all yours. Push it. 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, you know.
Have you ever
need.
had any moments like that, Gabby, on broadcast where you're like, I have how much more time to fill?
Oh, yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things in developing schools. I come from the aspect of, I remember in broadcasting school, they were like, there's no such thing as a perfect broadcast. So the thing that makes good people are how they deal with the fires when they inevitably come. And I feel like filling that bag of tricks and just being like, oh, yeah, what do I got? I got some Pokemon cards last week.
Later today, Gabby, I'm going to ask you this question, so think about it. Have you ever been actually scared on a broadcast? We'll come back to that.
Yeah. That also happened.
That
Yeah.
also happened.
All right, but
I got stories.
we have a broadcast ahead of us yet, so obviously we're going to have some fun with it today, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But hopefully the players will not have any issues with their internet. I know many of them play from their, offices. If the offices have internet down, they're going back home, so hopefully we don't have any issues or delays there. But we still have some content to catch up on because we got to catch up on the race for playoffs right now. We got 2 weeks left. We're coming around the bend, so let's send it to On the Range.
Oh, what's this? Oh, a derby invitation? Well, I gotta get my good hat on for this one. Ah, perfect. Now let's get going. All right, this is the entrance, I think. Let's see if it works. Well, no one's answering yet. Hang on. They're letting me in. Oh, looky, the hound race is about to start.
Is being spiked into the faces of Dignitas as Nature's Grasp connects onto Tomo. He has Cleanse, he has Flash, he does that, and Destiny gets traded back.
Now, I heard they have the best food here at these derbies. Oh, wee! It looks like some ground beef to me.
Not the timer. Oh! What?
All right, y'all, we're getting this is the first time I've ever seen a horror race. Oh, they're getting started now. Okay. You guys are so excited. They're getting started. Okay, the first left turn is coming up here. He's gonna take the first left turn. Okay, it's looking good. Looking real good. Okay, he's gonna take the other left turn. It's coming up real quick now. It's coming up real quick. Oh, they're gonna make the left turn's coming. Woo-hoo! He took another left turn, and turning. Oh my God, he's gonna do it again. Oh, there's a third left turn here. That's 3 lefts. I heard that doesn't make a right. Oh my God, he made it again. Wait, is there another left turn? There's another left turn, ain't there? There's another left turn. Well, that was my first derby.
Sir, you have to go.
Oh, well, I guess I gotta get going. We'll see you next time on the range.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
On that last video.
Yeah.
Did you specifically have to Google Derby at night?
Yeah, I actually don't know. That one was edited by Blue Jay.
Okay.
So shout out to Blue Jay, our editor, who edits a lot of our videos. For those ones, we just kind of send him a vague
Have
idea
fun.
of what
Do
we
your
want,
thing.
and we're like, do some stuff, and then give notes and feedback. So my biggest feedback was the sunglasses on the bunny. I was like, we need sunglasses on the bunny. But there's a lot of left turns on a derby.
There are.
Turns out.
I was actually trying to, I was like, all right, left turn, tracking the direction. I have a really important question.
Yeah.
As someone who has lived in Kentucky, is it a crime that I have never been to the Kentucky Derby?
A little bit, yeah. I think we're actually going to have to call the police right now.
I just realized that. I've never thought of that before, and now we're talking about derbies, and I think, ooh, I may have messed up there.
We can remedy this, Tigers. Maybe not Kentucky Derby, but we do have a derby like right down the road from us, the Santa Anita Park.
Plans.
So.
But we're like in a derby right now, so I think this is
True.
the best derby. The NACL is the ultimate derby that everyone should.
And honestly, yeah, we're going to remedy that immediately because I'm just remembering now the next video that we're about to throw to. So, Gabby, if you haven't experienced the derby, there's a couple things you need to know. Number one, a lot of horses. It is a race, so it does come out to who's in the lead. And that's pretty much all I know about
Those are the two things
that's
that you
it.
But because I knew those 2 things about derbies, I was able to make this next video. So let's take a look.
Welcome to the first ever Challengers League Derby. And they're off. CLG leaps out of the gate with a strong start. Their new jockey copy really is showing the rest of the race how it's done. Provincial teams have clumped up towards the back, but Fear bucking the trend and jumps out to the front of the pack. But Stack the Deck, Wildcard gallops to join the leaders. Hold on. We're starting to see some separation now as we see a burst of speed coming up from FlyQuest. Whether they can maintain, never mind. Dignitas has cemented themselves in the lead with Cincinnati Fear, Wildcard, and Cloud9 not far behind. What's this? Cloud9 is changing jockeys in the middle of the race. Menace hops off and Diplex pops on. I have never seen anything like this in my decades of commentating horse races. And it might be just what they needed. They're neck and neck for the lead as they push into the final stretch. I hadn't seen that one either, Steve. I had not seen that. That is not at all what I had imagined you were going for.
Really?
No.
Totally what you were doing.
I thought I was pretty clear about what we were going for with that video.
I thought you were going to take actual horses and like motion track graphics onto them.
Oh, no.
This was better. This
is way
surpassed
better.
my expectations.
Yeah.
Perfect.
This was a credit on my Shutterstock account that I made for free this month for this specific purpose because I couldn't find the right things for free online. I was like, well, I gotta get something.
Oh yeah, I've signed up for that for like the free accounts to use stuff for broadcast before. So.
Yep. Very
So
convenient.
You gotta do it, yeah.
There was a whole template. There was like 9 horses on there, and I was like, oh, this is great. I was able to use the flipping for evidence
You
to
did
Diplex.
that, and then you got the moose, so you only needed
Well, I already
9
had that
horses?
PNG made, so I just had to add the rocket effect to the butt. So yeah. Hopefully over the
The most
split,
important part.
we keep building that like image up, but then we're just gonna keep adding things to it. I don't think it'll look like a chain on there or something.
You'll
Yeah.
be very excited.
Yeah, no more cages. All right, let's take a look at the standings, I guess, since we're continuing with the show at this point. The standings as they are. Joshi, in your
Joshi.
professional opinion,
King
what's
is,
going on the screen right here?
well, we got the standings going through. This is the current standings for the Kentucky, the Challengers League
The
Derby.
Challengers League Derby.
Going
Or
on.
the Challengers League Derby, let's go.
The important thing, Gabby, that I think we came across yesterday is that Team Liquid Faith, Team Liquid First, Long
First.
Fs, have in fact found themselves in a funny number.
Yep,
Yeah.
that number is quite funny. Not as funny as a Cloud9 Challengers number, you know, if you're wanting to be
True.
dumb. This is the better number.
I don't understand.
I don't understand.
You know, it's
That's
because
my line, Yoshi.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we do have a lot of like very clear like sections of the standings. I think we've worked out too, right? You have teams that are struggling a little bit. You have a big section in the middle of the pack, and then you have like a couple of top teams who are really jockeying for those top spots come playoffs.
I mean, did you see the end of the Derby screen? It was literally
There's
who's
neck
on
and
there
neck.
right now. We actually had all 5 of these teams, and I think the big one is 100 Thieves Challengers. The big like kind of blow up for this team in a good way. Usually when I say blow up, I mean in a bad way. They're rocketing to the front of the standings. Unforgiven is clicking with the team, and they are picking up some pretty big wins. And I actually think the 100 Thieves Challengers, in my opinion, they're like a couple games behind Wildcard of Fear. They haven't played as many. They will pass both of those by the end of the final week. That's my prediction.
Who knew that Unforgiven would be so good?
I know,
Weird.
right? Never heard of this
It's
guy.
so strange.
He shows up in Challengers. This is the first time anybody's seen him, really.
Yep, just
from
getting
my understanding.
pentas. You know,
It's definitely weird that he's here in Challengers League and not playing like LCK. This guy probably win Worlds. I think.
Probably,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's pretty good.
I want to see him versus
Multiple
Berserker.
times.
Let's take a look at the schedule that we have today on this stream. Because, of course, there are 2 streams here on Path to LCS. Go check out twitch.tv/challengers. Pull up both if you got 2 monitors. But our schedule today, Immortals versus FlyQuest. That's FlyFam, by the way, so the provisional team. Then we have AoE going up against CLG and TSM versus CLG. Of course,
It's Faith for
Faith
AoE.
first, and
Yep.
then
Well, first is
Challengers
on the
again.
other stream.
Oh my goodness. The naming conventions.
got to do one of those. Oh, what was it? Did y'all see on the LCS when River and Blue were on the team and Captain
Yeah.
Flowers and Azale did the bit of going into River,
Yep.
but Blue,
That
no.
was good.
Okay,
Yep.
Gabby,
mean-
my favorite game I ever saw was a game in LCK. There was a player named Lee. He was playing Evelyn. And there was a player named Eve, and they were playing Lee Sin. And
That's
the
really
casters were
funny.
like, what do we do?
That's very funny, actually.
It was the
I don't
long
think
con.
We won't have any things like that unless, Chad pulls out a Chad pick. But even then, I think we can still just call him Chad. Let's take a look at him and the rest of the roster. Because Immortals Challengers are the first team we want to highlight here. ADD, Chad, Balulu, Wixie, Joey. We just saw them play yesterday, actually. So we all have the, bonus of just witnessing the tape. Latigris, what was your opinion? Because I know that Balulu was hyped up. Joshi was really saying this guy's the best team fighter. I know they didn't have a challenge necessarily yesterday as they were up against CLG Faith, and they did win pretty convincingly. But what were your thoughts?
I felt so honored because I got to see Balulu on the Zoe when coming in. And I feel like that's just what everyone dreams of if they're looking at the greatest PowerPoint of this team. So seeing just a full display of what he's able to accomplish when completely online was very, very enjoyable. And I think that they're going to continue leaning into that, right? So it's good for them to have that 2-0 coming into today to try and keep that momentum in the later portion of this season.
And speaking of PowerPoints, we have a Joshi GFX coming up next because we want to remind everybody of the final stretch here in the Derby. Who are the teams that they're playing in the final weeks? It was CLG Faith at first, now FlyFam. This is the easy weekend for Immortals Progressive Challengers. They are playing the 2 teams at the bottom of the standings, Joshi.
And we were saying that we really need to see Immortals Challengers actually go 4-0 this weekend in order for us to really consider them as potential people that can do well come playoffs. And so far, I mean, they're living up to it. They got a 2-0 yesterday. Now they just need to find a 2-0 going up against FlyFam today. Next weekend will be a little bit harder, but for now, we take it one game at a time.
Yeah. One series at a time. Focus on what's in front of you. But let's also look a little bit at their past, because when we take a look at the gameplay of Immortals, what are the big things you like to highlight here, Joshi, and the fans should be paying attention to?
I mean, obviously, we talked about it a little bit, but Lulu I've called out as probably the best team fighter in the entire league, whereas the rest of the team has been slowly having some strong moments, right? Chad has been showing us some more of these carry-style gameplay. He's been known for his Rengar. He's been bringing out the Graves a little bit more. And I said it yesterday. His dad tweeted at me, Michael Wixie Hernandez, he's back, baby. We got to see him with a block kill yesterday. We'll have more opportunities to see if they can continue that streak today.
It was so funny during the interview when Joey was like, all the comms was just me yelling, give him Penta, give him Penta. And nobody gave him the Penta. They like to troll Wixie a little bit. But FlyFam, their opponents today. I love hyping up this team because they are so fun to watch. And then every single time, there's like around between 25 and 35 minutes, there's the moment. The FLYF moment, where the family crumbles,
Now,
the
Gabby,
structure falls apart.
Are you familiar with
They
the
sell
FLYF
the house.
moments?
The FlyFM
dark.
moments. Yes, I was looking back on some of the VODs and to really get some context for what I'd heard y'all talking about in the podcast and things that you've been doing. And it's been interesting because I think that this team, when looking at where they are coming into the season, they're very, very green in a lot of ways to match the color of the organization under
Whoa,
which they
and
are.
The lights.
Yeah, and the lights, yeah, we did a whole thing to make sure that it matched. But I think the best thing to showcase that is when hearing Instinct talk in interviews about being the leading voice because of the experience in the LCS in previous seasons. And then you think about the fact that Instinct is also still somebody who is very early in their career. It really sets into perspective what you really are going to see in the games from them. And a lot of moments like that happen when you have a lot of green players. So eventually you shore them out, and we're looking to see how frequent those happen over time.
As we start looking towards their final stretch, their last opponents, one player that we are kind of interested in looking at is obviously Lunasia has been having a pretty decent laning phase throughout the course of the season. We were not expecting a whole lot from this player going in, and they have drastically surprised us with how well that they have performed. But Hyper is another player that also played in the academy system last year during spring. We were pretty critical of his play back then, but coming onto this new team, it's not necessarily the best opportunities for success, but I definitely think Hyper is a player that definitely learned to play around the lanes a little bit more. We saw clear market improvements in their jungle pathing over the course of last time that they were in the academy system, and hopefully they can help out FlyFam get at least a couple of wins.
And as we get a look at some of the footage from FlyFam throughout the split, I think it's also important to highlight this is their third jungler. They started with Goo, then Maniac, now Hyper. We've seen a couple teams actually so far this split have very fluid rosters. Some players, scheduling-wise, it's not working out. Just competitive-wise, not working out for whatever the reasons. We've seen a lot of changeover, and Hyper's one of those newer additions to the league.
Yeah. The other player that we see on our screen right now, Lunasia, is actually, I think, a second or third in total solo kills that they picked up over the course of the regular season.
I think Hoon might have passed them, but yeah.
I mean, it's second or third, right? It's like,
It's neck and
MNS is so high, and then you have, like, Hoon and Lunasia, who are, like, super close to each other in terms of overall solo kills. And Lunasia, for a brand new player, solo killing some of our more tenured top laners is honestly, like, really impressive. The big question's always been, will they be able to continue that strength going forward and actually carry the game? Because we've seen some difficulties there. That's also the hardest part for a lot of rookies to do.
Especially in the current meta, because, I mean, we've heard
He's
that...
not an AD carry.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, top lane can get ahead, but it doesn't always matter too much. Pick and ban is ready, so as we're hopping into that, that's going to be the question, is how does FlyFam want to draft around Lunasia? Because so far, they have been heavily drafting around, like, okay, give Lunasia a Jax, give Lunasia a Renekton, something that he can, solo carry with. But then, like you said, we don't get to that point in the game where they actually are able to execute.
Start looking at the draft. Gabby, I know you saw IMT. You got to see Balulu Zoe yesterday. Is there anything else you're looking forward from them today?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the Zoe. I also enjoyed Joey on Rakan. So I think anything that continues to give him agency in these matches is really nice to see. Hyper has historically had an identity with the Lee Sin, so it makes sense when you see that coming out at times where it hasn't been a common ban. You're like, all right, well, it's a Hyper thing. Because
So rude. It's like the newest guy, and they're just target banning with the first two picks.
It's fine, though. I feel like I have to be a Hyper fan because he spent a semester at ISU, Illinois State University, which is one of my alma maters. This is where I went to grad school. So if I'm taking the collegiate League of Legends, fandom into it, then there's a little bit of history there. So they go and they throw hate at him with the Lee Sin ban, and then I'm just throwing a little love to try and counteract it a little bit.
Very supportive.
Immortals are approaching us like Michigan right now because they just took away 3 of his champs. Like, look at this. He's literally like the newest member of the roster, and now he's got to go like. And they even banned out the buy, so 4 junglers are gone. I know Lee Sin's more of a pocket pick, like you said, Tiger, so it's not like a meta ban, but this is a heavily pitched jungle pool. Do we still see a Maokai? And then if so,
Probably,
what's
yeah.
the response? Okay, Chad goes Maokai. What you got, Hyper?
This is definitely going to be the interesting thing. And the thing is, you don't have to actually pick your jungler here. You can actually wait a little bit because so many of the meta junglers are already taken away. It's like, well, what else do we even ban against this guy, right? This is why everybody says it's important to have at least 6 champions that you can play at a moment's notice because sometimes things like this will happen. We are already going to see whatever Hyper's 6th best jungler is going to be, and if you go to your 7th or 8th, like, the difference is probably not that big of a difference. And so we're already seeing Instinct and Sword. We've been seeing a lot of Zeri Lulu from them throughout the course of the regular season. We've seen a lot of Lucian Nami from them, but just making sure that they have something that can be relatively strong. And as you called out earlier, Steve, is in fact Lunasia's Jax.
Now, based on how the game went yesterday, Tigers, we saw Bajani get a solo kill against ADD. I'm going to make a bet here. I actually think, not even seeing what ADD's locking in, I bet Lunasia gets 2 solo kills this game.
This game or this series?
This game.
Ooh.
This game.
Wow.
Just
putting on the
this
line?
game. Yeah,
I don't have
what's
any hair to put on the line at this point.
Yeah, a little bit. You got some stuff going on.
I'll make you a sandwich since you're here live. How about
I just
that?
ordered you food.
I know you did, but it's funny.
But
All
then,
right.
Joshi, you need to request the most ridiculous components of this sandwich. You can't make it an easy one.
That'll be one of our
Okay, okay.
halftime bits.
What if
I have to go to
you
the store during the
You
game
make
and pick up
yourself
the
a
ingredients.
sandwich, and I pick the things that go on it.
Ah, you know what? Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Anything
Bye.
for content, Yoshi. I don't know what
Deal.
I'm getting out of this other than just,
If-
you know.
If they do get 2 solo kills, I'll eat it. That's the deal. Okay.
ridiculous
into-
sandwich either way. Yeah, audience, if you haven't realized yet, we're a bit unhinged today because of the, you know, the shuffling arounds with LA weather, but we're loving it. We're leaning into it, and we're, you know, getting really amped for our first game
time.
between
Joshi moves to
IMTC
LA, and
and-
a month later, his internet's down.
Twice.
So,
Mhm.
Twice. But we're, you know, we're making it work. We have a show, everybody. I was gonna bring up the Silas because that's another potential jungler, depending on the ults that were locked in for Immortals. And with Maokai and even the Rakan, I was already thinking Silas jungle, maybe if Hyper knows how to play it. But
He's definitely
it's
played
gone,
it
so.
in like Champions Queue and Solo Queue in the past, right?
Sure,
This is
Yeah.
very stereotypical hyper champion, but with the last couple bans coming through, a lot of range DPS taken away from Immortals. But the big thing is,
Range
Balulu
ban?
still has a lot of their big picks still available to them.
Yeah, I mean, you have that bot lane that they were looking for, right, with the Xayah Rakan, and still a lot of that flexibility in the mid lane. A pretty standard, the Zarya and the Lulu on the opposite side. But I am trying to think of, I wonder what Hyper has been playing lately, because you look and it's all been the meta picks thus far. The short time that he has had since returning, a couple
Yeah.
Sejuani games, Maokai game, and an Elise game. So we'll have to dip down, but as you both pointed out, probably waiting till later in the draft to do so. And
I think now you would go for it because you want to save that counter pick for Blaze. Like, giving Balulu counter picks sounds like a death sentence.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
hey, the Wukong. Right, yeah.
That's a good
he's,
champion.
All right.
he's also in the meta.
that's true, that's true.
I remember some analysts were saying that they were expecting Wukong to be the most played character throughout the course of the regular season, and a Poppy coming through, and a Talia. Interesting. Now, the Poppy looks to me like it's probably going to be a counter pick going towards the top lane, just because the Maokai exists, and you don't really see Maokai in the top lane as much because you don't have as much map control with it there. But you do become a better tank. Like, that's kind of the trade-off that you would
Yeah.
be making.
I
Yeah.
feel like, the Poppy does a lot to stop the engage of what right now is mostly just the Wukong. Jax can kind of have follow-up engage. Sometimes a big flank can come in, but there's not a lot of engage otherwise on FlyF, and they go for the Victor. So this is kind of like a team fighting core with a Jax.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
I mean, it works out fairly well, right? The big thing here that I'm looking at is if Blaze is going to have a good laning phase, this is one of the matchups to do it in, right? Talia's early game is pretty bad, and then Victor's early game is pretty poggers. And so just having that combination does mean that Blaze can play for advantage here in this lane, especially if Hyper's there to help him out. And the other thing you called out, you said Lunasia's going to get 2 solo kills up against ADD. It's very hard to solo kill a Poppy.
Yeah, maybe
It's also very hard to solo kill a Cho'Gath as Syad, but we also saw that happen from Bajani yesterday, so.
We did see that. So the precedent has been set. What are you getting into this bet, Tigris? Two solo
bet-
kills for Lunasia?
Yeah, I'll get in on the
Alright,
bet.
what are you wagering?
Yeah, what am I wagering? I mean, I guess I have some weird stuff I could eat here too. I
We'll figure it out. We'll talk about it over the course of
How
the
about,
game.
Yeah,
how
I
about
got a blender.
Latyrus
I
gets
can-
to pick the ingredients?
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
There
Yeah,
we
give
go.
it.
Okay.
Send Steve 3 ingredients, and he will go grab them for us. But we're gonna kick Steve
Oh,
out of his
yes.
own room right
Get
now
outta
to start to get
here.
into this game. Remember to get
Yes.
into the conversation. Hashtag NACL on Twitter and spam the team you think is going to be winning today. Going into this one, look at the shenaniganeries, to borrow Magical's term, in the offlane already.
Shenaniganeries is ADD sought out by FlyQuest currently, and Hyper making the rotation over. But for this top side, I know that y'all were talking about it. I am curious to see exactly what does happen, because it feels like Lunacia wants
Oh
to
no.
duel. Okay, they did the little bait and try and hit a bit. But as you can see by the start, right, they would love it if Lunacia was able to get a lead, try and put ADD down when it will be difficult to get those solo kills on this Poppy later. And Fly trying to decide where they want to invest their resources throughout the early game.
Yeah, normally this is where I would talk about how, like, yeah, when Lunacia gets fed, it's how they get their wins, but that would be lying. When they look good and actually have pretty decent games, that is usually where the strength tends to come from, right? Lunacia is oftentimes able to take a lot of these side lane structures and put a lot of pressure on the other team, but one of the big things that oftentimes happens is there's not enough strength on the rest of the map to actually make it work. And so, you kind of watch this. Something that we're not quite seeing is ADD is getting chased around up in the top lane right now.
Consistently just walking around here. And I mean, Lunacia just directly trying to face off and take that aggressive positioning. It feels like they do have their eyes set on this Poppy, Joshi.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And this is really good from Lunacia, just keeping ADD as far back as possible in the bottom lane.
Some dueling down bot. Sword getting a bit of a chunk down, but does have that sustain in the pocket right now to be able to pop some more. But I mean, when you're looking at that bot lane specifically, right now though, some swings around onto ADD. You just continue to see that pressure, right? ADD really wanting to get up on this farm, but Lunacia doing everything to try and aggress. But in that bot lane for FlyQuest, they do have that Zeri contingency of, okay, no matter what happens, we do have some reliable scaling. And then Wixie and Joey, I have loved seeing what they've been able to bring through with a bot lane duo that is continuing to become more and more prominent in the meta as of late.
Yeah. And we saw, again, Wixie had a fantastic series of games yesterday. In particular, like the Zeri Quadra kill with the Penta that was stolen, despite all of Joey's comms. And
Tried so hard.
Now is going to be their opportunity, right? Instinct and Sword have been a bottom lane that we had decently high expectations of that have kind of struggled. And now as Hyper's coming down towards the bottom lane, skipping over a couple camps, it does get spotted over his own blue buff. And Chad is in the area. This should be a tough gank.
Up nearby if there is a need for intervention, and Hyper with the immediate retreat. I think a lot of the junglers, there's been a few more than others this conversation has surrounded, but you're always looking at how these junglers decide to go for these early plays in terms of how much time they are dedicating to hover around that lane, right? We've seen some that end up being in that position of, oh, I really want to stay to get the payoff, but then that can quickly turn to a deficit and a bad use of time if not allocated properly. So seeing Hyper just kind of make sure that he goes and says, okay, I'm going to go get this clear. Nothing that was really going to be had there, while Wixie and Joey were more towards their turret and returned to some traditional pathing.
As everybody backs away. Oh, Hyper's coming back at the right time.
Going on in, knock up onto Instinct, but that's the shielding going good for Wixie so far with Joey slowed down and walking it out. Hyper wanted to get the return, but no summoners expelled.
Yeah, and that is one of the benefits of playing the Xayah Rakan, right? That we haven't seen quite as much is even when you're very aggressive here, you're so safe as the Rakan because of your ability to return. But
Oh.
Hey, see what happens if ADD solo kills Lunacia.
Oh, that's true. We didn't.
That's
do
not part of the
like
bet, he says.
Okay, not part of it, not part of it. ADD, I mean, just making use of the terrain on the Poppy up here, finally starting to get that wave pushed up and down on the bot side. There's the summoners coming on through. Heal used by Wixie, trying to get to a more cautious positioning because you see that return damage. But in the end, over on mid lane, it's the 2v2. Both of the junglers hanging around. No kills just yet, though. Heals on both sides expelled for bot lane.
As all these summoners are down a little bit, right? It does give a little bit more opportunity to actually go for some of these big fights, but one of the things that is kind of exciting is Instinct and Sword. They're playing super aggressively here, not able to actually find anything further. But one of the things that we were kind of talking about with CLG Faith yesterday, Gabby, is the problems for these provisional teams usually aren't during the laning phase, right? And one of the things that we were saying is that if Blaze was going to have a good game, he really needed to make sure that he was bullying Balulu early on in this game. And so far, he's done an admirable job. He's up about a wave of farm already. And when you're strong as a Victor, it creates a lot of problems. That's the other team's side.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that point about where, yes, the early games tend to be fine for these teams, it emphasizes the fact that when, ooh, nice little knockback here, when you're looking at the setup and kind of what leads to that, you talk a lot about the fact that late game is one of the hardest skills to develop for a squad. And because you really need that experience, a lot of times in scrims, you're going through the early game, you're really able to follow up on practicing upon these different strategies that you've been really honing in with your staff, but you need that flexibility of these different scenarios to be able to fully execute in a consistent way in the late game. So while you see more of that difficulty with these provisional teams in developing that skill, you also see the greatest rates of progression when you're looking from the beginning of the season to the end, when these rosters are kept together, or when players do get pro mode and they can continue to build on those skills that are very emphasized in these organized leagues. So I think it's one of the most fun things to track in terms of player development.
Oh, for sure. Real quick, while we're... hold on.
Over the wall, Chad's going for it, and boom, stun gone. First blood for Immortals Challengers.
Great stuff. This is something that we love seeing from Chad and Balulu, their ability to move together with the freedom of movement that Dalia has, already picking them up the first kill. And they target him with bans, Gabby. They're targeting him in game. Feels like there's not a lot that Hyper can do. But before we get too late into it, Gabby, I do want to remind you, we need one more ingredient for Steve.
Ooh, one more ingredient.
Yeah. I have horseradish, black beans.
Black beans. You get like warm milk.
Ooh, okay, that sounds awful. Send it.
Yeah. Like, not cold milk, because I feel like that would cover up some of the other...
Warm milk. We'll have a microwave it before whoever has to eat it.
Yeah, put pepper in the milk, because I don't want it to neutralize the horseradish.
You got it, you got it. All right, well, he is off on his way for our bet. So far, there have been 0 solo kills going into it. But there's still plenty of time. There's still lots of game left to be played. And it is Immortals with only a small lead at this point. And again, kind of something that you were touching on before, Gabby, is the fact that FlyFam have a really strong later game to fall back on, right? You have the Jack scaling, you have the Zeri plus the Lulu, who's effectively like 3 champions all coming together. And then Victor is a monster later the game goes, just because you've already gotten all of your upgrades, you do a ton of damage, and you're really relying on having the extra movement speed that comes from your Q in order to kite out against a lot of these melee champions on the side of IMT.
Yes, and FlyQuest right now able to secure the first dragon. And speaking on that point, if you're looking to the Victor to get stronger in the later portions of the game, of course you want that chance for him to farm up and build that gold, which you have more of an opportunity to do when facing off against Talia that is going to be roaming across the map and trying to make plays. So that's where you see Blaze with the CS lead and trying to make the most of it, while Balulu was having those opportunities to roam alongside Chad.
Yeah, he's also getting close to being able to spend his first Victor bucks, right? He's almost at 100 where you get the laser upgrade, and this has already been a lane that's going quite well for Blaze, just on the fact that it is a strong laning phase, but it's also just even better once you actually complete the laser, and you can just ignore the wave at that point.
Yeah. Just do your thing as Victor really get beefed up to join the rest of the squad that's looking to do exactly the same. You can see some rotations across this map right now because the Rift Herald being up brings more of a focus on this top side. Lunacia off against ADD, who's getting stunned. Flash for Flash. Chad is here for intervention if needed. Lunacia cannot finish it in time. So with jungler presence, a disengage here. All the while over towards mid, getting some multiple knockups as Hyper goes in. Balulu executed. Immortals now down 1 member. Still Instinct pretty far down towards that bot side. No bot laner intervention because Wixie is there as well. So it's FlyQuest right now on the Rift Herald.
Yeah, and FlyQuest picking up that kill onto Balulu. Balulu was the one who looked like they actually wanted that fight, right? They're the one who popped the ghost. They're the one who ran through the choke point. It is going to be FlyFam already picking up this Rift Herald. They have a small lead going into it, and now Hyper, who they spend a lot of time trying to remove from the game, I mean, he's doing just fine, right? Picking up the Rift Herald, picking up the first neutral objective, and will be able to funnel that gold, probably going up into the top lane.
Yeah, doing all right, Hyper, doing all right.
Doing
First
good.
dragon, got the Rift Herald, got a little bit of gold building up into the pockets of FlyFam. Man, so do the provisional teams, was it a requirement for it to be an F? Or did they just
No.
all end up with F names?
No, because I mean, you have like AoE Gold, Cincinnati Fear, and...
but the ones that are attached to LCS or Challengers teams feel like they all have Fs. So I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I think it's just a funny coincidence. It has definitely, you know, confused us a couple of times in the past. You heard us mess it up today. We are in week 6, Gabby. I will let you know it doesn't really get better. But it is definitely a situation here where FlyFam, again, we've seen this position from them before, but this might be one of the best laning phases that we've actually seen from Blaze, especially considering the caliber of his opponent, right? Already up 30 CS, not really been tested, gets to spend some Victor dollars already, has the laser online, and now he's going to be a much bigger problem as we start looking towards these upcoming fights, and I think it'll really come to a head around this next dragon if IMT does choose to actually fight it.
Especially when you go farther down that path of comparison between Blaze and Balulu. It's great to see Blaze having this great laning phase, but you and others have called out the belief that Balulu is the best team fighter in the game, and I want to see how that works with Talia, considering the Weaver's Wall and different ways to really break up the fight, and how Blaze is able to try and match that with the damage output as he gets stronger into the later stages of this game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to pay attention to, right? Because as Talia, you have to be very proactive with your abilities. One of the things that I was talking to Balulu about when I did a pro review with him was he was talking about how when you play Zoe, you have to kind of walk into every fight kind of already knowing how you're going to be using your abilities to zone people out, to land all the sleeps because it's such a long cooldown. And it's definitely something where I have a lot of faith in Balulu to do it on this Talia as well. Even if it's not one of his most played characters, it's not the same kind of artillery mage, it is a bit more of a DPS style character, and he's been looking for a lot of these opportunities. He's been leaving the lane to try and see if he can come up and help ADD or towards Wixie and Joey.
It's such a cool tidbit to know what it is that he likes about Zoe and the way he approaches these fights, because that's a translatable skill. The idea of being proactive in the way you think to approach it. Yes, some champions benefit more than others because of their setup, but you're always going to get a benefit from that as a player if you're approaching fights in that way. And it makes a lot of sense hearing that, of why he's found so much consistency in the T-fighting capability with the rest of this squad. So cool stuff. And with 30 seconds to go for this next dragon, we might end up seeing a fight in the near future. FlyQuest collapsing upon Chad and Joey here in the jungle. Instinct creating that line of fire. Ultimate coming out from Chad. Root onto one. Knock-up response. Blasting away. Balulu is here for the damage as well, though. Hyper first to go down. Well, second actually with both junglers eliminated. Junglers being one of the most important components here ahead of this dragon, and IMT zoning them away from Riverside.
Yeah, IMT being very aggressive, looking for that dive, not giving themselves an exit strategy at all. And so, I mean, with both junglers going down, Gabby, I think that means we're going to get round 2 here fairly shortly, as both teams are going to be backing away, trying to spend the gold that they have just picked up. And look at that. Blaze already has the Luden's Echo, or Luden's Tempest now completed, as we start looking at this fight 2 for the dragon.
That puts such a different energy. Oh, we should have made a bet about ADD getting the solo kills. What did we just see over on the top side?
I mean, absolutely crazy stuff. ADD has not been showing this kind of aggression throughout the rest of the season, and actually finding it here is a huge stop to one of the major win conditions that FlyFam were actually bringing to the table. The FlyFam, now they're bringing down the Rift Herald, they're throwing it in the mid lane, and looks like they're going to be faster to the rotation than the members of IMT are. As they come over towards the Dragon, they're already here set up. The only thing they're missing is Lunacia would have to teleport if he wants to join.
They do seem confident in the way they're able to approach that fight because of that power spike that you had mentioned with Blaze, as well as having that Rift Herald set up down mid. It is a little bit of a different timing. Sometimes you see that hold waiting for the fight, and we're perhaps trying to see exactly how things would follow up upon that Rift Herald being dropped mid, but at least get that blast down into a lane that's going very well for Blaze and they want to capitalize upon.
Yeah. It's been interesting, right? Blaze has been playing a lot of things like Akali, some more of the melee mids in particular, but this is a different look from this guy, and already showcasing a pretty strong laning phase again. And it's also been interesting to kind of watch how he and Hyper have kind of worked together, because they've been moving together a decent amount, even if they're not necessarily finding the most immediate success off of it. And Hyper was a player that, again, we were really critical of during their time on TSM Academy in spring of 2022, But so far, I mean, it feels like they are very naturally sliding in. It definitely already feels as though FLYF have had a little bit better opportunity to try and make plans.
And when you're looking at those plans, the jungler is definitely someone that's always at the center of that discussion. Important component for FlyQuest fam and finding a way to set themselves up for success later on. And exactly what they're trying to do. But IMT want to cut through that, targeting Blaze here in the center. You got Chad if you need some assistance, but Blaze looking to take one out all along the while. Balulu almost goes down, but Immortals come out on top in the play.
Great job playing in the wave for Blaze, trying to stay alive as long as possible. Gets Balulu's flash at the very least, but I think that might actually be enough, right? IMT really has to back out very quickly in order to be ready for this upcoming dragon. They spent a lot of resources on that from Joey in order to make this fight happen. And FlyFam haven't lost a whole lot of positioning. We already see the Hypers on their way back down. But something we haven't touched on, Gabby, up in the top lane, ADD has already picked up almost the entire turret by himself.
Up in CS, the turret almost eliminated. You see that next wave crashing on through. So ADD feeling very good about that laning phase. And their decision to collapse upon Blaze in the mid lane was perhaps a response to seeing where Fly was trying to play around. They dropped the Rift Herald. I believe that Rift Herald had gone right before the 14-minute mark. So they were wanting to get those turret plates, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they didn't though. Crashed at 14:02.
Ah, 14:02. Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense then why they weren't holding on to it as a piece for a kind of fight initiator or to throw things in their favor around Dragon. They wanted to get the plating perhaps, but either way, they're showing these leads that they want to see Blaze come ahead in. So IMC allocating some of their resources to try and collapse upon that. ADD has been doing a good job over on this top side. Now another attention spent towards top with the Rift Herald #2 abounds. An instinct here to offset Balulu, who's always going to be looking to make that quick rotation, but the bot lane for Immortals is present as well. Even Scuttle coming in for them. FlyQuest have to be very careful here. They want to go.
You see almost everybody here already, right? Balulu, the one person who hasn't quite arrived, but with the level 2 ult, has a pretty large range with which to use the Weaver's Wall. And IMT, because they're already here, it is so hard to walk in on a Maokai if they are already the ones taking control. And so we see Instinct and Sword trying to fight for mid lane priority, but it's so hard to do that going up against Azaya. And Wixie just clears out the wave relatively easily. What does IMT do with this position? I would love to see them actually try and force the Rift Herald.
And Balulu is here at the ready, made that rotation from Fountain, and FlyQuest, they choose not to engage here because of that setup, the Maokai, the warding, taking out the controls that FlyQuest had put down prior. IMT gained the capability to get the hit here on the Rift Herald. So dropping the first one to FlyQuest, but taking the second one for themselves. I like the choice of FlyQuest into saying, we don't want to contest that. Let's try and take this dragon. The only thing is, now, because of the later rotation towards it, Immortals are here to try to contest. You throw down the Weaver's Wall. Teleports coming in. FlyQuest do manage to secure the dragon. They're second for the game, but Immortals want to go for the fight that much more. Hyper getting the knock-up onto one. Joey going in for the knock-up in return. And elimination of Hyper at the stead. Follow-up and root and more. Double kill for Wixie, set up by the Immortals squad. They said, we didn't get the dragon, but we'll take some lives.
We'll take some lives. And wow, the way that Joey actually played that was huge. Just the way to stay around the edge of Hyper, make sure that even though he takes a knockup, he's still going to be able to have the grand entrance afterwards, and at least another small victory coming through for FlyFam. They also pick up the first turret. We haven't quite seen that FlyFam moment yet, which Steve was talking about before, but we're starting to see, right, one of the big differences between so many of the provisional teams and our challenger teams is oftentimes the ability to actually commit to plays. We saw that Immortals were there, they were ready to actually go for the fight, whereas FlyFam, it looked like they said, we're going to go do the dragon, but they hadn't decided how they were going to try and exit. They hadn't decided what their plan was after IMT actually got there, and that's oftentimes been one of the big differences in IMT. They have a small lead, and we're kind of expecting them to kind of build this up because the major win condition of Lunacia is no longer really on the table.
It makes me wonder the detailed portions of the thought process in those plays, because I think that's a great call that, yes, they made the play for the dragon, and it almost feels like, yes, we're getting that. We're stacking the second one. But that other half of the play of the exit strategy not being as clear. And I wonder what they can do to develop the full fleshed out nature of some of these decisions, which is admittedly hard. It's easier said than done because you're reacting to the the state of the map. You know, this was a reaction to the way that Rift Herald was going on top side. But we'll see if they're able to shore things up a little bit coming forth from this, because it's not an unsurpassable gold lead that IMT have created. There is still that dragon stacking. Look at the damage down here on the bot tower. They still have Blaze building up a lot of strength throughout this game. ADD and Lunacia continuing to fight one another on the opposite side of the map this time around.
Yeah. It's been fascinating watching these two just like swing at each other harder than almost any other set of top laners, right? Because they're both melees, they just have to get right on in there. But the other thing that we kind of have to touch on a little bit, right, is the fact that Instinct was a player who also played for TSM Academy in the past, right? And Hyper, I believe they were on the same team together at the time, because Instinct was one of these players that we were very excited about, because while they weren't the best laner, they were a really good team fighter, especially considering how young they were. And now Immortals are trying to make sure that they can build up enough of a lead that Instinct never really gets there. And so I think this game will really come to a head around the next dragon in about 2 minutes, where FlyFam, if they can get the next dragon and buy themselves an Infernal Assault win condition as well as a potential fight there, that'll give them the tools necessary to actually take this game a little bit later. Whereas IMT, I mean, if they can blow up that fight, if they can bait FlyFam into fighting them there, that's a huge opportunity for them to actually close out the game.
So what you're saying, Joshi, is we might get some real fun team fights later on, huh? See who can play them out best, if FlyQuest can pull something for themselves and bring this game back. Well, one thing that I am interested in, I know Kangas had pointed out in the draft that having this team fighting team, but then Jax on it. What are your thoughts on kind of that overall approach?
Well, we'll get to that. Wixie.
Oh, yeah. Wixie now the subject of Hyper. Spinning to win it, but on the retreat for now. Immortals bot lane getting more control over this mid lane as they've been pushing the wave up. ADD all the while doing the exact same task on that bot side. It's just a lot of map coverage. Look how dark. Yes, there's some wards from Fly around that river, but there's still a minute to go until that dragon spawns, and everywhere else is so difficult for them to traverse.
And it's not really going to get easier, right? This is one of the big reasons why Maokai has been so popular. And even though Chad is not a huge fan of playing the character, he will even admit that it is at least pretty good because of what you can actually do with it. It is so difficult for FlyFam to start getting set up. And now, this is where we have to start looking at who is sitting on a lot of gold before this upcoming fight. But Luli just went back to spend his 2,500 gold. And the last person who really has a lot of money is Blaze. And look at this, IMP trying to catch him out before he can get back.
The big old money holder now flashing away from the Joey play.
That's actually really big, right? Because Blaze now with no flash is suddenly a huge target for Weaver's Wall style plays because he can no longer leave.
We'll have to see what Immortals decide to do with that. I'm sure they're feeling good about hearing that summoner blown. And now across the mid lane, they've been pressuring everyone, having Balulu over on that bot side. You also have to be wary of the fact that Blaze now using that teleport will no longer have that available. And it's not like Balulu brought teleport either, but is really right now just asserting some pressure elsewhere, being that Immortals feel pretty confident in other portions of the map. Do have to be wary of Lunacia making the plays top. Hyper's trying to go for it. There's the teleport coming in, drawing the pressure of that top side. Hyper so close to death, but a knock up on some Lunacia as soon as entering Wild Growth to keep alive a little more, in the knock up and separation of the Weaver's Wall. Joey, another knock up here to follow. The CC is really good from Immortals, getting 2 kills for themselves, drawing out the resources of FlyQuest, and now going for the objective setup.
That might have been it for this game, right? IMT now with a large lead, 4,000 gold. They're looking for Hyper as well.
Yeah, and if you take out Hyper, that's the jungler right there. The only one that can really threaten this Baron play that IMT clearly feel confident in. FlyQuest know it's going down, but there's nothing they can do about it. And now with this dragon up, we're at 24.5 minutes into the game. So this is only the 3rd dragon taken. Teleport from IMT to collapse upon Instinct and Sword, gravitating through their jungle. You do have that mobility extra from Lulu, but ADD over the wall and the slam into terrain. Sword has been dulled, and Instinct chunk punked as well. Has to go over the wall to escape, but this is an easy turret takedown for IMT. Purple drawn out, Baron buff and more. You already see Chad hovering over on that dragon side. They are feeling secure in the leads that they have acquired. Hyper forced to escape his own jungle right now with IMT having full control.
And now IMT as they move over towards the dragon, right? We said that might be the final play, but I think we saw our FLYF moment of the day, unfortunately, where it looks like everything's going A-okay. Then there's one moment where the challenger teams are able to kind of come out ahead, and this time it was Lunacia getting a little bit too close. Chad, go back! You're not done!
Go back! Go! I know that it doesn't feel like an amazing dragon because it's your first and you're feeling like the game is already pretty secure, but still good job to finish that off.
Woo!
Yay!
Yeah.
Did the thing.
Did the thing. And now starting to look for the way for them to actually end the game. Hyper looking for Chad, but that's a tanky Maokai.
Yeah, and here across mid,
Here's the wall.
Feels like FLYF just want to try to make some kind of play happen, but Hyper has to flash out of it. A good draw out from that wall, and they get the lockdown onto Sword. While Fly wanted to get picks for themselves, it's Immortals doing exactly that. The exhaust and the follow-up for their second, and now finding their third. Wixie with the double, and Immortals are taking control of this game, but they have been doing that for quite some time, Joshi.
They have been doing that for a while here, Gabby, and now it looks like IMT are going to be closing this out relatively quickly. And we saw, again, some like kind of bright moments coming through from Blaze. We said that they needed to actually have a really good laning phase against Blue's Talia, and they did that, right? We said that Hyper was going to need to try and find some of these aggressive pathing opportunities, and we saw a couple bright moments from that as well. Unfortunately, it seems like the same problems continue to play FlyFam in this game. But on the flip side of that, we said IMT needed to go 4-0 this weekend. They are very close to doing that. This is looking to be their third straight win.
Hit the double digits yesterday and wanting to bring it to more. Look at that. Oh,
all right, that's funny. That's funny.
That was funny. The timing, the ward, everything.
There's the thumbs up too.
Yep. Blaze knows what happened. That was pretty great.
Blaze knows. ADD will go back in the VOD. Their coach will point it out and be like, "Hey, this is what you did. You need to make sure you go into the bush every time." Okay, those are small things. I always love hearing coaches in those moments because they always ask, "Hey, do we need to talk about this?" And the players rather go, "No."
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like, especially as the spectators, and that's why I have so much respect for pro players, is because it's one thing to know, okay, I need to do this and this specific thing, but all of us play competitive games. Like, how much of a difference to say that versus when you're actually executing on every single detail in game? And I think that is one of the most impressive things about pros. And you're all right, next time, a little bit of a step into the bush.
One of the things that I always look for when I watch competitive teams is seeing how well they do the little things, because it shows that they're thinking about the entire game. And one of them that I always check is, oh, well, he's big engages. Not that. But I was going to say, because Red Sweeper on the wards, both people get the gold if the person who is sweeping doesn't kill it, right? So if they let somebody else kill it and share the little bit of gold, it shows that they're thinking about the entire game. And I think that's one of the things that we will get to see a little bit more from our top games. So here comes the final engage.
IMC thinking of every moment of this game to make sure that it is a clear dub. Breaking on them turrets in the last fight, just right here around the Nexus. Hyper trying to make that last stand. A little bit of a back off. Joey offering all of the shielding and protection possible. Turned it around a bit though. FlyQuest, enough of the members standing despite taking a lot of damage from IMT, who lose 3. And just saying, okay, I've got my Poppy ultimate. Stop chasing me. Bye, instincts. IMT losing out on that fight, but it seemed like they got a little bit of that tunnel onto the end of the game, and now are going to wait their chance for these double supers coming all the way across.
Yeah, I mean, you called it out, right? The game didn't end, but it kind of feels like it has, right? Like, we are now looking at a spot where FlyFam cannot leave their base basically ever again. Lunasi is trying to push this out, but is honestly, oh, I thought Sword was one of the IMT players. But it's honestly like super difficult for them to actually push out far enough to try and contest the Baron that's spawning in 47 seconds. And IMT, they just need to group up together. They can probably just go for an end and bum rush the Nexus. You don't even really need to fight your opponents again unless FlyFam are really ready to take a proactive fight. And so now FlyFam, you look at the amount of damage the Hyper just takes from the super minions just kind of standing here.
That's what I'm wondering when we do get around that Nexus next time, because I feel like yesterday, Joshi, when we were casting, there were a lot of them where they're at Nexus and there is a larger priority over getting those last few kills than actually hitting the Nexus. I feel like that's a big trend. So I'm looking at IMC. All right, what are you going to do? You going to bum rush it and just get the end on it? Or are you looking for that big flashy fight to pick some more up for the stats?
I mean, you know, we have at least 3 dopamine players on this team, right? Chad, Balulu, and Wixie, all major dopamine players. They will go for the cool plays, and so I would not be surprised if they just choose to bum rush the Nexus or try and kill FlyFam while they're on their own fountain, right? These are the kind of things that they love to do, but Immortals now stacking it up. The members of FlyFam all backing away. We should get one more opportunity for our fight. But FlyFam so far behind, it would take another big overextension from IMT, and I think, in order to extend this game.
IMT, which way are you going to try and end this? Direct Nexus hits. You going for the fight around the fountain? I feel like they feel good with the Baron buff. Here's the approach from Fly. Want to end it. Poppy ult to send one of them away. Weaver's Wall right down the center. Flash away from Blaze, who has the wild growth upon him. But in the end, none fallen until Instinct is gone. One of the greatest damage threats no longer available to FlyQuest. IMT feel good in their pursuit. Blaze can't get back into the fight because of that upfront damage. Balulu going forward to try and get the finish off, and Lunasia can't zone them away. IMT here to stay with the dub on game 1.
We got Steve back too.
Hey, I didn't know you'd be here.
I was really hoping the game would go long enough for Joey's flash to come back up so we could see him flash into a Weaver's Wall coming up again.
We had a couple funny moments towards the end.
There's a lot of funny moments in that game. Immortals definitely should have ended that one a little bit faster, though.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
They still get the dub. They're still 3-0 on the weekend so far. We're looking for one more game from them going up against FlyFam. And, you know, Blaze had a better game than I was expecting. True. I think was probably the biggest takeaway.
Good stuff from Blaze. We'll see what they can pull off in game number 2. We just needed to see Kangas' face, that's all.
Oh, yeah.
Right before.
I was told I have to be here, so I ran over when I thought the game was ending, and I just got to sit here next to Joshi while the final push happened again. Yeah, I was like, oh, look at that.
Well, thank you for joining us, because now you get to chill with us on the break while everyone else has a chance to get your snacks or beverages or whatever you need to prepare yourselves for game number 2 soon enough.